fellow members of Griffith University Council, Vice-Chancellor Professor Roy Webb, Ms Patience Toms, former Deputy Chancellor, Dr Jeff Mann, President of the Queensland Law Society, Mr Neville Bonner, Doctor of Griffith University and former Council member, special guest Professor Tony Bennett, staff and students of the University, ladies and gentlemen. As Chancellor of Griffith University, I'm pleased to welcome everyone, and I thank you for joining us on this special occasion. Graduation ceremonies are part of the rich tradition of universities worldwide. They allow public acknowledgement of the achievements of graduating students and afford an opportunity for family, friends and peers to join in celebration of those achievements. It's a time when the relevance of many of society's traditional ceremonials are being questioned. We at Griffith believe that this formal recognition of our graduates is a tradition that will endure. Our graduates will shortly come forward to be individually acknowledged. We will share their pride, and I offer warmest congratulations to each of them. This afternoon we extend a welcome to Professor Tony Bennett, who will deliver the occasional address. Professor Bennett is Director of the Australian Key Centre for Cultural and Media Policy and Professor of Cultural Studies with the University's Faculty of Arts. His outstanding contributions to scholarship have been recently acknowledged in his election last year as a Fellow of the Australian Academy of the Humanities. Professor Bennett will return to England later this year to take up an appointment as Professor of Sociology at the Open University. We shall look forward to hearing his address later in these proceedings. Many of you may not be aware that Griffith is now the 8th largest university in Australia in terms of funded student loan. We're a multi-campus institution with 6 campuses covering the Brisbane Gold Coast corridor, and we have more than 21,000 students enrolled in an impressive array of undergraduate and postgraduate courses. Demand for university places in southeast Queensland has increased, notwithstanding declining demand in other states. Over the past 4 years, Griffith and the other universities in Queensland have actively lobbied the federal and state governments for additional student places to meet demand. Our efforts have resulted in over 3,000 new undergraduate places being awarded to Griffith for the period 1995 to 1999. 60% of these places have been allocated to the university's Gold Coast campus and the remainder to our new campus at Logan. We are pleased with this outcome, but we will continue to argue the case for additional places to ensure that the community we serve has the best possible access to tertiary education. The demands of teaching and research in a multi-site institution with staff and students accommodated at campuses located along a 60-kilometre corridor are complex. On 1st July last year, the university adopted a new academic and administrative structure designed to better manage the related activities of our multi-campus operations. New faculties and schools transcending campus boundaries have been established to foster academic coherence in teaching and research and to provide a greater range of academic opportunities for students at all campuses. The new structure is supported by a microwave link connecting the university's Nathan, Mount Gravatt, Logan and Gold Coast campuses. This telecommunications backbone provides high-speed transmission of image, sound and data between the campuses and provides a great degree of flexibility in delivery and access of information for teaching, research and administrative purposes. The university's new campus at Logan, which admitted its first students in February of this year, has been designed around learning centres. All subjects offered at the Logan campus have been developed in flexible delivery modes which permit students to access course material through a variety of options, including interactive media via the internet. The university will use the Logan campus as an exemplar for the introduction of flexible learning opportunities for students on all campuses over the coming years. I should mention that the university's multimedia distance learning network has been nominated for a Computer World Smithsonian Award to identify and honour the visionary use of information technology to support positive social, economic and educational change. Griffith's entry for the award is a case study on the communications network which links our 6 campuses. The case study will remain part of the permanent reference collection at the Smithsonian. This afternoon, our graduating students are from the Schools of Arts, Film, Media and Cultural Studies, Humanities, Justice Administration, and Languages and Linguistics in the Faculty of Arts. Also, the School of Environmental Engineering and the Australian School of Environmental Studies in the Faculty of Environmental Sciences. These schools and faculties have recorded a significant number of successes in the past year. The Faculty of Arts has commenced 2 courses at the Logan campus, and 78 students are enrolled there in the Bachelor of Arts and the Bachelor of Arts in Communication. The university is pleased with the high level of demand that exists for our Logan courses, and we will follow the progress of the first cohort of students with great interest. In addition to preparing curriculums for offer through flexible delivery modes on university campuses, the Faculty of Arts has continued to develop subjects to offer through the Open Learning Agency of Australia. 3 subjects prepared by the School of Humanities have been approved for offer as electives in the Open Learning Bachelor of Arts. The Queens and Irish Association has provided sponsorship of $5,000 for the development of these subjects. This is but one example of the active support Griffith receives from community groups, a support which we gratefully acknowledge. The Faculty of Environmental Sciences has long enjoyed a reputation as a leader in its field. Late last year, a team of researchers from the faculty's Centre for Catchment and In-Stream Research were presented with the Queensland Landcare Council's Research Award for their work on the rehabilitation and management of riparian lands. That team has gone on to represent Queensland in the National Landcare Awards. The faculty has also hosted a number of successful conferences and seminars. One international conference, co-hosted by the University of Pennsylvania and the International Association for the Study of Insurance Economics, was on risk and sustainability. That conference explored issues associated with the management of public and private sector environmental risk, the siting of difficult-to-locate industries, and global travel, tourism and development. Let me return now to our graduating students. We're here this afternoon to give them the recognition that is their due. With their studies now complete, they are ready to formally receive their awards. All will have acquired the knowledge and skills called for in their chosen fields of endeavour. More importantly, they will also have acquired a set of generic learning skills. An ability to critically analyse information and form considered opinions will remain with them throughout their lives. I congratulate all of them on their achievements and express our warmest wishes for their success in their future careers. I now call on Professor Dennis Lincoln, Deputy Vice-Chancellor Research, to introduce the deans who will present the graduates from their respective faculties, graduates who are to receive their awards at this ceremony. Thank you.
Chancellor, Professor David Saunders, Dean of the Faculty of Arts.
Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts. Paul Algie. Claire Allen. Chancellor, the next graduate has also been awarded the Arts Medal for 1997 for outstanding academic performance, Donna Anthony. Eve Anzolin. Peter Apps. Natasha Arnold. Melissa Bell. Lisa Berry. Sharon Berry. Renee Bishop. Margie Belitha. David Bracken. Anne Buchanan. Laura Cantrell. Nicole Carpenter. Claire Clapham. Jan Clark. Angela Cox. Vanessa Crowther. Colin da Costa. Rowan Dayananda. Suzanne de Smet. Grant Donges. Donisha Duff. Sharon Dunn. Tiziana Ferrero Regis. Chancellor, that graduate has also been awarded the Humanities Medal for 1997 for outstanding academic performance. Camille Ford. Kyriakula Fotinias. Cheryl Fraser. Lorraine Freeman. Deirdre Gillespie. Mark Gillespie. Evie Ginting. Cheryl Grant. Samantha Grossler. Stuart Hodgson. Kate Holloway. Matthew Hugan. Maxine Hughes. Andrew Katavich. Sarah Keenan. Casey Kellett. Aja Kusumataja. Barbara Lyons. Nancy Ordonez. Samantha Pearson. Gary Pianta. Stephen Pike. Jenny Pye. Amanda Richardson. Danielle Schumack. Chris Thomas. Sean Walsh. Kylie Waterhouse. Andrew Westwood. Christina Woods. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Bachelor of Arts and the Bachelor of Theology, Bill Wilson. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts in Australian and Comparative Studies. Joan Andrews. Helen Ansell. Rosemary Arnold. Carolyn Campbell. Janet Elsol. Janet Erskine. Rosemary Field. Cheryl Frozer. Janet Huntley. Pat Kelly. Rachel Lindsay. Joan O'Donnell. Yvonne Pick. Paul Reynolds. Mark Shannon. Robin Smeltzer. Gay Smith. Jennifer Smythe. Kelly Taylor. Darlene Raitt. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts in Communication. Mary Atkins. Julie Bendel. Janine Bennett. Katie Burley. Darren Christie. Joshua Cooney. Darlene Denton. Laura Donovan. Lyndall Ferrari. Kerry Flanagan. Patrick Garrett. Taylor Glasby. Bronwyn Glass. Kim Gordon. Susan Harris. Penelope Heath. Laura Hensley. David Hicks. Shadi Hoff. Sophie Hull. Rebecca Lever. Stephen McFarlane. Jackie Ma. Alistair McPherson. Samantha Novicki. Nathan O'Neill. Emmanuel Papas. Katrina Rees. Neville Race. Alison Sauter. Kylie Seaton. Rebecca Shaw. David Slater. Nicola Stromso. Ivan Topic. Megan Whiteside. Ellen Yang. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts in Contemporary European Studies. Susan Blick. Natasha Boton-Perodot. Donna Cleary. Ivo Clayman. Andrew Davies. Marina Denisev. Joshua Henderson Scott. Sabine Martin. Christina Rollins. Stuart Rowland. Helen Waters. Chancellor, I present two graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts in Humanities. Tina Brewster. Linda Dimmock. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts with first-class honours in humanities. Colin Cooper. Rebecca Crow. Narelle George. Trish Reed. Kurt Schubert. Linus Thomas. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Bachelor of Arts with second-class honours, Division A, in Humanities. Leisha Bateman. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts in Justice Administration. Ellen Anton. Rachel Arnott. Gregory Bowman. Ben Beach. Kenneth Bamey. Michelle Botka. Brett Bordujenko. Gregory Brown. Chancellor, Linda Buxton, a third-year student of the Bachelor of Arts in Justice Administration, tragically died late last year before completing her course. Linda had been particularly successful in her chosen field, achieving high academic results. For this reason, the university decided to award the degree posthumously. We welcome her family and friends, many of whom are present at this graduation. Chancellor, I ask that Linda's mother, Carey Marison, be presented with Linda's testament. Joe Cargill. Jenny Keruana. Leanne Collins. Narelle Collins. Mark Courtney. Debbie Damon. Paul Denny. Kelly Dodds. Lisa Duncan. Stuart Ferguson. Daniel Gurgley. Tony Goddard. Rebecca Goss. Rachel Graham. Joanne Grant. Trevor Green. Rachel Greenfield. Matthew Griffin. Carla Hartnett. Lorraine Houlihan. Catherine Howard. Philip Hughes. Murray Jensen. Amanda Jefferson. Alfred Johnson. Michelle King Martin. Christine Lawson. Melanie Lowry. Miles Macedo. Ben McKenzie. Craig McKenzie. Brett McNee. Ronnie Morell. Sarah Nagel. Kirsty Newton. Debbie Nicholson. Bede O'Mara. Danielle Ramsden. Natalie Rankin. Christy Rawson. Angela Ritchie. Kurt Stanley. Erica Varela. Kenneth Webster. Chris Winter. Lee Wild. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Bachelor of Arts in Justice Administration with second-class honours, Division A. Francis Gand. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Arts in Screen Production. Craig Binns. Chancellor, the next graduate has also been awarded the Screen Production Medal for 1997 for outstanding academic performance. Toby Cook. Christopher Coward. Naomi Logan. Danielle Zuvela. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Graduate Diploma of Chinese Language, Kathleen Begley. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Graduate Diploma of Indonesian Language, Zan Frizel. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Graduate Diploma of Japanese Language, Wengai Cheong. Anna Elkington. Amy Kaman Fu. Emma Miller. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Graduate Diploma of Media Production, Mina Bao. Chancellor, I present two graduates who have been granted the Master of Arts in Cultural Policy Studies, Fiona Ward. Peter Winmolen. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Master of Arts in Film and Television Studies, Richard Ogden. Linus Wang. Koo Hyun Yu. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Master of Arts in Women's Studies, Janelle Cook. Marilyn Ginn. Julie Martin. Chancellor, that concludes the presentation of graduates of the Faculty of Arts.
Chancellor, Professor William Hogarth, Dean of the Faculty of Environmental Sciences.
Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Engineering in Environmental Engineering, David Ballantyne. Simon Barker. Renee Batchelor. Tria Bradford. Nicholas Chang. Joanne Soria. Tim Dilworth. Geordie Galvin. Harry Gordon. Emma McCauley. Martina McGregor. Joseph McLeod. Jaime Mahia. Peter Merced. Luke Opray. Paul Prenzello. Stephen Thorne. Linda Willard. Luke Zambelli. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Engineering with First Class Honours in Environmental Engineering. Dylan Ordea. Natalie Muir. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Engineering with Second Class Honours, Division A in Environmental Engineering. Deborah Budden. Danette Johnson. Alison Marzelek. Jamie McCorkle. Alexandra Watt. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Engineering with Second Class Honours, Division B in Environmental Engineering. Robert Bell. Christopher Greenaway. Nathan Radley. Matthew Rollison. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Science in Australian Environmental Studies. Paula Atchison. Renee Asnikar. Neil Bartholomew. Fiona, Bachelor. Nikki, B. Tim Blumfield. Colleen Bowe. Alison Brown. Jeffrey Buchanan. Alex Crisp. Stephanie Cumming. Yvonne Dan. Kim Dawson. Elizabeth Edwards. Jennifer Ellis. Sue Finlay. Stephen Giller. Louise Gilshannon. Vivian Grice. Jung Hu Han. Samantha Hegman. Sarah Hindmarsh. Shane Holborn. Matthew Hucker. David Hunt. Karen Hurley. Susan Hurst. Joe Jensen. Suzanne Johnson. Angela Jones. Matthew Carl. Michael King. Melinda Laylow. James Lahane. Justin Lee. Kimberly Mears. Daniel Morton. Chancellor, the next graduate has been awarded the Environmental Sciences Medal for 1997 for outstanding achievement, Tracy Nitz. Kim Phillips. Megan Phillips. Joanne Platts. Darryl Porsche. Michael Reef. Terence Rees. Rebecca Roberts. Michael Robertson. Patricia Rogers. Amanda Rose. Joanna Rose. Matthew Ryder Smith. Cameron Selwood. Sarah Simpson. Jeffrey Smith. Natasha Staines. Claire Sterling. Wayne Taylor. Andrew Thompson. Craig Toomey. Gabrielle Van Willigen. Fiona Veldman. Rebecca Walker. Cheryl Wardrobe. Keith Whitcomb. Erin White. Olivia Whiteoak. Jason Williams. Darren Wilson. Danielle Wiseman. Daniel Witten. Danielle Woolard. John Wright. Craig Warrill. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Science with First Class Honours in Australian Environmental Studies. Daniel Siskos. Tara Martin. David Mills. Simon Nehemiah. Deanna Tomarini. Chancellor, I present two graduates who have been granted the Bachelor of Science with Second Class Honours Division A in Australian Environmental Studies. Guy Lane. Cole Mathers. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Graduate Certificate in Water Care, Mark Sherson. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Master of Engineering Science in Environmental Engineering, Vivian Horman. Karen Hopper. Vijay Kodapapa. Tishay Mirakar. Ian Schiffelbein. Chancellor, I present two graduates who have been granted the Master of Engineering Science in Waste Management, Jeffrey Collins. John Van Dartel. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Master of Engineering Science in Water Care, Michelle Howard. Chancellor, I present two graduates who have been granted the Master of Environmental and Community Health, Kirsten Dyer. Terry Shirillis. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Master of Environmental Education, Sharon Connell. Christopher Foreman. Meredith Newell. Stephen Rowell. Chancellor, I present a graduate who has been granted the Master of Public Health, Denise Brooks. Chancellor, I present graduates who have been granted the Master of Science in Environmental Management, David Angel. Kerry Brady. Julie Davies. Andrea Dobbin. Bill Manners. Mark Rigby. Robin Stone. Saray Warjuni. Chancellor, that concludes the presentation of graduates of the Faculty of Environmental Sciences. Chancellor, Professor Dennis Lincoln, Deputy Vice-Chancellor Research, will now present candidates for the award of the University Medal. This will be followed by the presentation of graduates for the award of Doctor of Philosophy.
Chancellor, the University Medal may be awarded to a graduate who has completed the requirements for both a bachelor's degree of the university and a degree with first-class honours in recognition of academic excellence. Chancellor, I am pleased to present a graduate of the Faculty of Arts who has been granted the 1997 University Medal. Narelle George. Chancellor, I am pleased to present two graduates of the Faculty of Environmental Sciences who have been granted the 1997 University Medal. David Mills. Simon John Niemeyer. Chancellor, before proceeding with the presentation of graduates who have been granted the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, I shall, with your approval, read a citation introducing each of those graduates. Today, the University is proud to honour its Doctor of Philosophy graduates who have satisfied the rigorous criteria for the award of the degree. Chancellor, the following graduates have been granted the degree of Doctor of Philosophy taken in the Faculty of Arts. Dr. Collins. Dr. Collins' thesis takes an innovative and challenging approach to the study of historical relations between women and policing in Queensland during the period 1860 to 1949. This is done by examining the policing of men's erotic relations and by exploring the participation in the police force of those women whose roles are either police officers or police wives. By resisting traditional forms of analysis, Dr. Collins' post-structuralist thesis constructs historiographies which articulate the complexities of sexuality and policing. Dr. Collins. Dr. Mullins. Dr. Mullins' thesis, which is based on the written testimony of Australian Catholic married women, offers an analysis of Catholic marriage today. The study considers the construction of marriage in church teaching, the knowledge and reception of those teachings by women, and the relationship between the teachings and women's actual daily experience of all aspects of married life. In the thesis, Dr. Mullins demonstrates that feminist theory can inform Catholic marriage theology to support Australian Catholic women in their quest for a marriage relationship that is a partnership between two self-sustaining and differentiated persons. Dr. Mullins. Chancellor, the following graduates have been granted the degree of Doctor of Philosophy taken in the Faculty of Environmental Sciences. Dr. Chan. Dr. Chan investigated the sources of emissions of fine particle aerosols in Brisbane. Dr. Chan found that the major sources of particles included soil, roadside dusts, motor vehicle exhausts, sea salt, industrial processes, and biomass burning. In particular, the sources for the finest fractions mainly arise from combustion sources such as motor vehicle exhausts, industrial processes, and biomass burning. These fine particles have been found to be associated with health problems as well as visibility degradation and subsequent loss of amenity. These results clearly indicate the need to control fuel combustion sources in order to protect human health and public amenity. Dr. Chan. Dr. Kamrowski. Dr. Kamrowski has investigated nutrient removal efficiencies of two ion exchange materials. An Australian natural zeolite was effective in reducing nitrogen content in secondary wastewater effluent, and synthetic anion exchange resins were effective in reducing phosphate content. Fundamental ion exchange equilibria and kinetics were studied for these two systems. Overall, the results of Dr. Kamrowski's research indicate that a dual medium ion exchange column process can be used to improve the quality of wastewater effluent from wastewater treatment plants. The technology can be used as an add-on process to existing wastewater treatment plants in Australia to meet increased wastewater loads or nutrient standards. Dr. Komorowski. Dr. Redding. Dr. Redding states in his thesis that land application represents an alternative disposal option for the large quantities of sewage sludge generated within Australia. However, before this disposal option can be recommended, a better understanding of the behaviour of sludge-borne contaminants in soil is required. Dr. Redding investigated the behaviour of various heavy metals, nitrogen and phosphorus in soils following additions of sewage sludge, and found significant leaching losses occurred immediately after sludge addition in soils with limited retention capacity. Information from Dr. Redding's work will greatly assist the development of guidelines for sludge disposal in Queensland. Dr. Redding. Chancellor, that concludes the introduction of Doctor of Philosophy candidates. I now ask that they be presented with their awards. Chancellor, I present Dr. Patricia Frances Mullins. Oh, I'm sure. Chancellor, I present Dr. Anne-Marie Collins. Chancellor, I present Dr. Yi Chung Chang. Chancellor, I present Dr. Sonia Ann Komarovsky. Chancellor, I present Dr. Matthew Redding. Chancellor, that concludes the presentation of Doctor of Philosophy graduates.
Ladies and gentlemen, there will now be a brief musical interlude performed by the Griffith University Collegiate Singers.
And through the bagpipe sound, the dips tread on their ground. And through the bagpipe sound, the nymphs tread on their ground. Finding my sweet music, you sweet life refusing. Finding my sweet music, you sweet life refusing. Say, dainty dips and speak, shall we play bally break? Say, dainty dips and speak, shall we play bally break?
I call upon the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Roy Webb, to introduce the guest speaker.
Chancellor, our guest of honour, Professor Tony Bennett, has had a long and illustrious association with Griffith University. Born in the United Kingdom, Professor Bennett completed a Bachelor of Arts degree at Oxford University in 1968. In 1972, he was awarded a Doctor of Philosophy degree at the University of Sussex. After working for a brief period at Bristol University, he joined the Open University as a lecturer in interdisciplinary studies and as the chair of the Popular Culture course. In 1983, Professor Bennett came to Griffith University as a visiting senior lecturer in the then Faculty of Humanities. He continued on at Griffith as the convener of the program in Australian and Comparative Studies. In 1987, he became the founding director of the Institute for Cultural Policy Studies. He was Dean of the Faculty of Humanities from 1990 to 1993 and was appointed to a chair in Cultural Studies, a personal chair in Cultural Studies in 1993. In August 1995, he was appointed as Director of the Australian Key Centre for Cultural and Media Policy. Professor Bennett has been a visiting professor at the University of Iowa, the University of Illinois, and the University of South Africa. Later this year, Professor Bennett will be leaving Griffith to take up the chair of sociology at the Open University in the United Kingdom. During his 15 years at Griffith, Professor Bennett has been extremely successful in winning and administering a substantial number of research awards, consultancies and submissions, including the Australian Research Council large grant of $1.8 million for the Australian Key Centre for Cultural and Media Policy. Much of Professor Bennett's academic work has been dedicated to cultural studies with special interest in literary theory, popular culture and cultural policies. He has written or edited 14 books, including Formalism and Marxism, Outside Literature, and Birth of the Museum, History, Theory, Politics. His next book, Culture, A Reformist Science, will be published in April. He is currently working on 2 books, one on Australian everyday culture and the second on late 19th century museums and colonialism. Professor Bennett is an editorial board member and advisor to 5 international journals and has presented many public lectures and keynote addresses in several countries. It is with very great pleasure that I welcome Professor Bennett here this afternoon. I now invite him to deliver the occasional address.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, colleagues, graduates, ladies and gentlemen, I am indeed most pleased to have the honour of addressing you on this occasion which for those of you graduating marks, as earlier pilgrims might have put it, a significant way station on your journey through life. And it's with this historical and religious parallel in mind that I want to begin by reading you the first verse of the 51st Psalm. It goes like this: Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness. According unto the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. But why, you might ask, why would I start a graduation speech by quoting from the Bible? Well, not because I want to preach to you, but as a way of introducing my topic, which, and I hope you won't think this too tactless of me, as it's a subject that most of you would probably rather forget, at least for a while, but nonetheless my topic has to do with the role of tests and examinations and their consequences for those who pass them, like those of you who have just graduated here today, as well as for those who don't. What's the connection between the psalm I just read and that topic? Well, the verse that I've just read was known in the Middle Ages as the neck verse. So called because it could literally save the necks of those who were able to read it in the educated language of the time, that is Latin. When lawbreakers were brought before a court during this period, roughly the 12th, 13th and 14th centuries, they had the option of claiming what was known as benefit of clergy. This meant that if they could demonstrate that they were members of the clergy, which, since access to literacy at this time was available only to those in holy orders, they did by proving that they were able to read. If they could demonstrate that, then their case would be remanded from a civil to an ecclesiastical court. Big deal, you might say. Well, as it happens, it was, since ecclesiastical courts had no death penalty. To be able to read in this context was literally a matter of life and death. Those who could read the neck verse when it was presented to them in court as a test escaped the gallows. Those who couldn't, didn't. My point in recalling this now archaic custom has to do with the interpretation placed on it by Stephen Greenblatt, a literary studies professor at the University of California, who in recounting the tale also reminds us that this was one of the first forms of examination in which what was tested, and as you can see with serious consequences, was a cultural skill, literacy, that was acquired through an acquaintance with literature, the Bible. Being a part of the world of letters at this moment in Western history could bring a man, but not a woman of course, for women were excluded from holy orders and thereby also in good measure from the world of letters. But being a part of the world of letters at this point in time could bring a man literally back from the grave. So if then, round about examination time, and especially if you're ill prepared, which of course would not have been true of anyone here today, ever, but if around examination time you ever got an uneasy feeling around the neck, there are good historical reasons for this. And although you're now through the noose, so to speak, I'd ask you to spare a thought for John Trotter, one of the world's first crammers, who, although an illiterate layman, claimed benefit of clergy when he was tried for murder, learning the neck verse by heart while he was in prison so that he could cite it faultlessly when asked to read it in court. And so he did. Unfortunately, though, he didn't notice that he had been handed the text upside down. So he was found guilty and executed. There have been other times too, more recent ones and closer to home, when the ability to read something in the right language has made a difference, if not between life and death, pretty close to it in deciding who can live where, with whom, and for how long. I happened a few days after reading about the neck verse to pick up David Day's Claiming a Continent, an important new history of Australia, which tells the story of Australia, consistently and convincingly in my view, as a story haunted on the one hand by the dispossession of Aboriginal Australia, and on the other by the fear of Asian invasion, which still stalks the imagination of the far right. However, I hadn't quite appreciated quite how far, in the bad old days of the White Australia policies, Australian governments were prepared to go to keep Australia white until I read about another test called the dictation test. White Australia's equivalent of the neck verse, but with the added embellishment that the rules for this particular test were rigged to prevent anyone from ever passing it. Introduced as a part of the Immigration Restriction Act of 1901, the first and the most inauspicious act passed by the new federal parliament, the dictation test was a comprehension test that could be set for any immigrant deemed to be undesirable by a customs officer. Those singled out for this test were asked to read a passage and write it down. Fair enough, you might say. It's helpful then as now if people coming to live in Australia can read and speak English. The trick, though, was that the test was to be applied not in English, but rather in any European language deemed relevant by the customs officer, provided that it wasn't the language of the immigrant who had to sit the test. What this meant was clear enough when in 1916 214 Maltese men were refused admission to Australia because they had failed the dictation test, which had been set for them in Dutch. This test, which remained in force until 1958, when it was only withdrawn under international pressure, was thus a means of refusing entry into Australia to those who were considered undesirable, mainly on the basis of their skin colour, but without seeming to do so for racial reasons. After all, what fault was it of the customs officer if Chinese, Japanese or Indian migrants couldn't read French, Italian or German? Once again then, the neck verse, like the neck verse, the dictation test, divided and differentiated life destinies by means of a test of literacy. But why call these unsavoury forms of examination and testing, with their extreme and exceptional consequences, why call them to mind on this, the happy occasion of your graduation? Well, one reason is that it's perhaps of some comfort for you to know that however harrowing and trying your recent examinations might have been, they could have been worse. Now, I know you might need a little convincing on this point, as the modern university, has worked hard at perfecting all of the instruments of torture that it has at its disposal. In place of the earlier sudden life or death system of finals, today's undergraduate faces a life spent permanently on the rack of continuous assessment. We apply the thumbscrews with inquisitorial precision in the marks we award for tutorial attendance. And, as if that were not enough, no sooner have you graduated than we tell you that the need for a more flexibly skilled workforce means that you face a future of lifelong learning, in which your neck is never finally out of the noose of testing and assessment. But my more serious purpose is to suggest that perhaps just as much is at stake in examinations these days as was involved in reading the neck verse, although in a different way. In recounting this earlier form of examination, the neck verse, one which I'm sure concentrated the mind uniquely, Stephen Greenblatt also recalls an episode from a later piece of Italian literature, Boccaccio's Decameron, in which the unlearned and the unlettered are portrayed as being worse off than the dead. Reading, in this view, this Renaissance view, was not just the prerequisite for life in the literal sense, it was also the prerequisite for a full and rich cultural life, reading literature. We know better today, of course, and especially in Australia with its strong and rich traditions of Aboriginal oral and visual culture, than to equate literacy with culture. Just as, in the revaluation of popular culture and everyday ways of life that has taken place in recent scholarship, we know better than to suggest that formal learning is the key to all that is of cultural worth and value. There is, though, I think, still a kernel of truth to these earlier medieval and Renaissance views, in which literacy and learning are regarded as the keys to life. And it is this: education, with all of the trials, tribulations, tests and examinations that it entails, remains the key to what is perhaps the supreme value of modern liberal thought. It is the key to choice. It is the key to being able to find out about the full range of absorbing and enriching activities that our history and our culture, and other histories and other cultures have to offer, and being able to access them, to learn from them and enjoy them. It is, in short, the key to a full and rich cultural life based on an awareness of the full range of possibilities that is available. And if this is true of education in general, it's especially true of university education. Now, you might think that this is just my opinion, but it's not, and I have the facts and figures to prove it. Based on a nationwide survey of over 2,700 Australians, which asked them about the cultural choices they make in their everyday life. Now, I know better than to spoil what I hope is a perfectly good speech with dry statistics, so I won't. But let me tell you about just one of the findings which stands out amongst all the others, and it's this: that while Australians who have been to university are pretty much as likely as everyone else to do the sorts of things which make up our everyday cultural lives, just as likely to be couch potatoes in front of the television, or to go to the footy, or to go to the cinema, pretty much as likely to read thrillers and romances as anyone else, or to go to rock concerts, dance parties, or to the beach. While all of that's true, those with a university education are also much, much more likely to do a whole host of other things too. They're much more likely to own books and read them, more likely to like classical as well as popular music, more likely to be able to play a musical instrument, more likely to go to the theatre, more likely to read Peter Carey as well as Peter Corris, more likely to go to art galleries or to own works of art, and surprisingly much, much, much more likely to play sports rather than watch them. Well, I could go on, but the point is clear. Those who have a university education have a wider range of cultural choice than those who don't, and they exercise it. I call this to mind on this occasion, then, an occasion to celebrate your triumph over the testing times that you've just come through, because we are now in our approach to higher education in this country in the midst of testing times of another kind, ones in which the capacity to access this kind of choice has become, and from all indications will continue to become, increasingly restricted. The introduction of differentiated HECS fees related to the different income expectations of different vocations. The introduction of full fee-paying places for Australian undergraduates. The leasing out of the concept of open learning to a private company which is allowed to set tuition fees that are proving beyond the reach of average income earners. In all these ways and more, access to higher education in Australia, which means not just access to the prospects of a better job, but also to the means of cultural choice, has become increasingly restricted and in ways that are already showing up in the statistics. We know, for example, that many less mature age students, especially women, are now applying for admission to universities because family budgets, now increasingly committed to catering for the costs of the next generation's education, are stretched to the limits. I remind you of these things then, so that as you go forward into your future lives, you'll remember that what you have acquired here goes beyond a job ticket. Although I know that one can't be too confident about even that these days, and so I do hope that all of you who have graduated here today either have or will soon acquire professionally and financially rewarding jobs that will repay the investment of time, money and commitment that you and your families and your friends have made in your university education. But I also hope that you will continue to use your university education as a gateway into an expanded set of cultural horizons and possibilities, and that you will lend your good efforts to securing similar prospects for others, whether they might be today's mature age students or tomorrow's school leavers. Yet at the same time, we do need to recognise that education is not all that there is to life. There are times and occasions when pressing the opportunities of education on others can be culturally harmful, rather than the key to a full and rich cultural life. I have in mind the stolen children, who, subjected to a test far starker than even the dictation test, the test of skin colour, were forcibly removed from their families and homes in the cause of their assimilation, yanked away from their loved ones so that they might receive a, quote, better education, where better meant being denied any sense of cultural belonging. It didn't work. Here's the evidence of a Tasmanian woman removed in the 1960s and adopted by a non-Indigenous family. "I've got everything," she said, "that could reasonably be expected. A good home environment, education, stuff like that, but that's all material stuff. It's all the non-material stuff that I didn't have. The lineage. It's like you're the first human being at times, you know? You just come out of nowhere. There you are. In terms of having a direction in life, how do you know where you're going if you don't know where you've come from?" The report of the Human Rights Commission from which this passage is taken shows, citing those damned statistics again, that forcing a white education on the stolen children has proved anything but life-enhancing for them. Those who were taken away from their families have proved more likely to be unemployed, more likely to be in poor health, more likely to suffer from drug addiction, more likely to have been arrested, more likely to have served a term in jail than those who were not, separated from their families. And yet still the ability to apologise eludes us. Or does it? While it's clear that there will be no apology from the Commonwealth Government, many institutions and organisations in Australian society have taken this matter into their own hands. So I too should like, in concluding, to take advantage of this opportunity to express my own views, my personal views, on this matter. The churches, I think, have set a splendid example here, insisting on their right to comment on political issues when moral questions are at stake. And locally, our Lord Mayor has been characteristically forthright in apologising on behalf of the city for the past wrongs and indignities that the stolen children and their families suffered. At the national level, the arts community has organised a collective apology, and at a more individual level, hundreds of ordinary Australians are making an open and mobile apology every day with their car stickers saying simply on an Aboriginal flag, "Well, I'm sorry." Well, I'm sorry too, and I wonder whether Griffith University might not take a lead here in joining the churches, the arts community, and the many other organisations which have issued their own apologies, and calling on other universities to follow its example with the forthcoming Sorry Day in mind. There are good reasons for universities contributing to public debate in this way. As institutions with considerable intellectual and moral authority, their voice will count and aid the process of reconciliation. And there are good reasons for Griffith playing a leading role here. It has a long and proud tradition of supporting Aboriginal culture. It has Australia's first degree program in Aboriginal art. It has just introduced an innovative degree program in Indigenous studies. It has long been honoured by its association with that most distinguished Aboriginal Australian, Neville Bonner, and I believe that the majority of its staff, its students and its alumni would wish it. For one of the findings of the study I referred to earlier is that respect for Aboriginal culture and support for Aboriginal cultural and political rights is much higher among those who have a tertiary education than among those who don't. Inevitably, though, for a university to take a step of this kind would be controversial, and I know that this is a matter easier said than done. There are, I think, though, times when controversies neither can nor should be avoided, and I believe this to be one of them, an issue which for Australia is one of the great ethical tests of our times, and one which, if we fail it, will give us good reason to recall the words of the neck verse with which I started. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to thy loving kindness. According unto the multitude of thy tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. For I do not believe that future generations will be either tender or merciful in their judgment of us if we do not, wherever and whenever we can, seize this moment to do the right thing. Thank you.
Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen, I've decided I better get these notes the right way up, recalling the story of the upside down neck verse. Professor Bennett has reminded us that literacy and learning are key values in any civilised society, but that may be a fairly common observation. His development of that into the area of how literacy and learning expands choice and how it expands choice for graduates, I think represent the key remarks that he's given us prior to going on to his later topics. Many, of course, of our graduates have always yearned for certainty. Students still come to us saying, how can I get from A to B with maximum certainty? But I think it is salutary to recall, as Professor Bennett has reminded us, that a much more important thing to learn is how to exercise choice, so as to find a rich and varied pathway through life's opportunities. Of course, he's emphasised the stolen generation matter and how what I suppose from some points of view began as an exercise designed to increase choice in our society for Aboriginal people went tragically wrong. And I'm sure we'll be all thinking carefully about his remarks in relation to the stolen generation. Finally, I want to thank Professor Bennett not only for his address, but on this particular occasion for his tremendous contribution to our university, a powerful figure in terms of the expansion and recognition, some might even say the invention of cultural policy studies, for his introduction to the university of much effective thinking and practice about flexible learning, now so important to the university and being implemented in a good manner at Logan this year for extension later on to all campuses. And less conspicuous in the public domain, his advocacy for cultural policy studies and cultural studies generally in the Academy of the Humanities in Australia, where through his efforts and those of colleagues an entirely new panel has been established, and Professor Bennett is of course one of the first academicians to be appointed to that panel, along with 3 members of the Key Centre for Cultural and Media Policy, a remarkable achievement for Griffith, for our neighbouring universities in Brisbane and for Queensland. So, ladies and gentlemen, would you join with me again in thanking Professor Bennett for his address and his contribution. And I always take this opportunity to invite all our graduates to join the Alumni Association of the University and to stay with us during your careers and support Griffith through those careers. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony is now concluded. When the fanfares begin, please rise and remain standing as the Deus Party, the staff procession and graduates retire.